Let's talk about some of the action from the weekend, Justin, because it's been a ridiculous weekend in the Championship, hasn't it? And there's only one place for us to start. Leeds United 7, Cardiff City 0. 3-word reviews for Leeds. Ashley says 7 is heaven. Darren says absolutely farking bliss. KS says Firpo assist machine. It's the biggest win in the Championship since May 2022 when Fulham smashed Luton 7-0. And Justin, this one got ugly very quickly, didn't it?
Yeah, it was one of those things where, from Cardiff perspective, it got pretty gross pretty quick for them, and you do have to feel for them, you really do, because it felt like this was a Leeds team who were just like, okay, we're going to turn it up 3 or 4 gears. And I know you've made the argument so many times this season where you just don't think Leeds have got out of second gear. This was Leeds full throttle. And like you said, it got ugly very, very quickly. And I think if you concede earlier at Ellen Road, you're in for a long afternoon. And unfortunately, Cardiff were.
Yeah, they definitely were. I know this game splits opinions. These kind of games split opinion amongst neutrals because it's obviously not a very competitive game. But I do enjoy a good thrashing, especially when it's like this, where if there wasn't a scoreboard, you might genuinely lose count of the score. But yeah, this was the dictionary definition of a thrashing, and Leeds genuinely could have won this by more. That's not overstating it, really. They had plenty of other chances outside of the ones they scored. It was a very, very embarrassing showing from Cardiff City, but Leeds were immense. I always think when it's a 5-0, it can sometimes be just a case of one team being exceptional or one team being incredibly poor. When you're getting towards your 7-0s, it's always the perfect mix of one team being incredible and the other team being terrible. And this was essentially that. And this was Leeds in top gear, Justin. I completely agree with you. I've said it on many occasions this season. I don't think Leeds have been in top gear. And if they have, then it's only a couple of times at most. This was that, though. This was the kind of showing that, for me, they've often threatened to deliver, but not done. Maybe not to the standard of a 7-0, but one where you've sat back and just gone, wow.
Yeah, it was a bloody hell sort of performance, wasn't it? I think from Leeds' point of view, I've disagreed with you all season on this, on the notion of them not being in top gear. I don't think you have to be in top gear or can be in top gear every week. So you don't
disagree with me. You have been saying the same thing at me, but you're just saying you don't think they have to be in top gear.
Well, yeah, okay, I am saying the same.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I'm saying the same thing, but I've taken a less critical stance on it, whereas you've probably been a little bit harsher on them from my point of view, my opinion, etc. But I think, as I say, Leeds don't have to be in top gear, but this is an example of when they are in top gear, because I will disagree. I mean, Cardiff were poor, and I think 7-0 makes them look poor. But when a team just catches you in the headlights like Leeds did, you've got no chance. And unfortunately, Cardiff were victim to Leeds just putting their foot down, and that's literally what this was. And I think the biggest praise you can give Leeds is the goals were pretty much cut from the same cloth, other than the penalty. It was getting to the byline, cutting the ball back into a dangerous area. And yes, you can argue Cardiff could have done a lot better, but this was incisive football at its best. This was Fark ball as we live and breathe it. This was the epitome of what you'd expect from Leeds under Daniel Farke, that we do see fleetingly, because they don't kill games early enough, but they killed the game and they went for more, and you can only praise Leeds for that.
Yeah, well, I agree with most of what you say there just now. I think we are on a similar kind of agreement, really, when we talk about Leeds this season, because I don't think there probably have been more than just the one top gear performance this season, but considering the strength of that squad and how the underlying data depicts Leeds, I don't think they've shown it on as many occasions as they probably should have. Having said that, I've always said since the first few weeks of the season that I think Leeds United will win the Championship this season, and I've never really been truly swayed on that. And as we sit here right now, Justin, even though you've got Sheffield United, who are only just 2 points behind, you see things like this and the fact that Leeds are top, having not had to be in top gear so far. I would be stunned if Leeds didn't go on from here to win the title. What do you think?
It's very easy to be won over after a 7-0 win. It really is. But I do think Sheffield United do have a lot to say in this title race. I think with Burnley, obviously I'm going to bring in other teams as an example, because Leeds have been sensational. And I think once they get going, it's going to be hard to stop, as we've seen under Daniel Farke. And this is the biggest example you can give, is Daniel Farke with Norwich. when his team got going, they really didn't stop. And even Leeds last season, when they got going, they were hard to stop. They were just very unfortunate that Leicester and Ipswich were in a very similar frame of mind. But with Burnley, for example, they draw too many games. It's very obvious to state that. Sheffield United, I think, have got a little bit to say in this title race, and I think there's a couple of big games coming up for both of these sides. But when you put in a performance like that, if you can repeat 60% of a win like this, yes, title is very much on. It really, really is. But it's about getting that consistency. And I think from Leeds' perspective, it's killing those games off. That's what could harm them going forwards. They've done a very good job of avoiding it, but it's killing games off and perhaps coming up against opposition who can pose a little bit more danger and a little bit more threat to, for example, Ilham Islay. That's the biggest weakness here. So, yeah, I'd be surprised if they didn't, but I think Sheffield United want to be in that conversation. I'd be rude not to put them in it.
They're definitely in the conversation, but for me, there's one team who are the clear favourites to win the title at this stage. And I think it says a lot about Leeds that it's only them and Bristol City, who at the time of recording are the only sides yet to strengthen this January. But the fact of the matter is, they just don't need to. This squad should be winning the league. As it is, it would be a failure if it didn't, I would go as far to say. And if they're finally getting to a stage now where they've worked through the gears and found that top gear, then they'll end up pissing the league. Because look, Burnley, Sheffield United, Sunderland have had runs where you've looked at them and gone, wow, they are a great side. And yes, I am including Burnley in that conversation. But their best is still nowhere near Leeds' best. It's just been about ironing out that inconsistency, which has let them down on occasion. And even then, still 2 points clear at the top of the league. And look, late this month, they've got Sunderland and then Sheffield United back-to-back. Then after that, it's a pretty clear run for the rest of the season. So this could be the month where Leeds split away from the pack and go on to realise the expectations that many people have had for them this season. And despite me saying Leeds don't need additions, they could strengthen anyway in what is just over the final 24 hours of the transfer window as we sit here right now, because several reports are saying that they're trying to sign Cameron Archer from Southampton. The problem is Southampton don't want to sell, but Leeds are trying to change their mind, Justin, just quickly. What do you think about that potentially happening in the next 24 hours?
If you've played Leeds twice this season already, well done. Well done. If they get Cameron Archer, who I think is such a good finisher, who's vastly undervalued and underappreciated by the teams he's played for in the Premier League so far. But if he steps down to the Championship, good Lord, God help the rest of the fixtures that they've got to play, because 7-0s could get quite regular, couldn't they? If he's leading the line.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you on that. Joel Pirro, Matteo Joseph have been guilty on occasion of missing a fair few chances. I don't think Cameron Archer is going to be guilty of doing that because he is an unbelievable finisher. So yeah, I would be very scared if that does happen for the rest of the division. A quick word on Cardiff as well, just in this scoreline. Does come as a bit of a surprise because they were unbeaten in 8 heading into this. So they'll be hoping it was just a very, very, very bad day at the office for them.
Yeah, I think it was. I want to say that because they've been performing really, really well. They've been very resolute. They've been creating a good amount of chances. And as I was alluding to with Leeds, sometimes you just get caught in the headlights of a team that have just put their foot down. And yeah, Cardiff have been well and truly hit by this runaway vehicle that Leeds have developed in this game. It was quite astonishing, really. So yeah, I think it was a bad day. It's all about the response, I think, from Cardiff. It's about reacting in their next game, because that's whether you can that's where you can tell whether it's a bad day at the office or a form drop off. Because we have seen it with Omar Ritza. He came in, did really well, and then there was a dramatic drop off in form and performances, and then it picked up again. So yeah, the next game's the reaction. Do feel for Cardiff, because obviously not only did their fans have to witness a 7-0 defeat, they've got a good record against Leeds. I think Cardiff have as well. But Leeds were very much chanting some funny things towards some of the Cardiff fans, especially a Cardiff fan who had a big coat on. Leeds' ability to target individuals based on the clothing they're wearing, I think, is better than anybody else in the country.
Yeah, after that Plymouth fan last year was wearing chinos and got mercilessly bullied for the entire second half. Yeah, I remember that well. But yeah, I don't really know where this came from for Cardiff, because they have been playing pretty well recently. It might have had something to do with Omar Reitzer not being there, because he has been banned for 3 games after his scuffle during the South Wales derby. But still, a group of players losing their arses as easily as they did here shouldn't really be happening. So I guess they'll just have to try and get over it quickly, because they still have the threat of relegation very much lurking over their shoulder. So they definitely need to bounce back as well as they can do. Plymouth got their first league win in 16 by coming from a goal down to beat West Brom 2-1. 3-word reviews for Plymouth. Timmy says, Greens staying up. Matt on our Patreon says, big European bastards. Owen says, Justin Peach tears. William says, definitely a pen. And we'll talk about that in a second, Justin. Don't get ahead of yourself. But we spoke about this game in the preview show, Justin. It was our game of the weekend. And even though Plymouth were better against Sunderland, I still didn't see this result coming.
No, I think, let's break it down. Let's defend ourselves a little bit. I think it's fair to say that a team coming into this off the back of a 5-0 thumping at home in their last home game, Plymouth that is, coming up against a team who have just thumped a team, scoring 5 goals last weekend in West Brom. It's fair to say this was a difficult outcome to see, especially when West Brom took the lead as well towards the end of the game. But Plymouth, to their credit, were terrific. I think this is what's got blurred a little bit online is that we'll get to the penalty. I don't think it was a penalty, and I'll stand by that. But I thought Plymouth were brilliant. I thought Plymouth were absolutely fantastic, and they deserved at least something from this game. And obviously, if Sunderland, as Mislic described it, if the Sunderland result was proof of life, this game was the moment they got to their knees. It's a fantastic performance, and one that they deserve a lot of praise for.
Yeah, I do agree with you to an extent, Justin. I don't think they offered very much up until the point when West Brom scored, and as soon as that happened, I assumed West Brom were going to go on to win that fairly easily. But the turning point did come with the penalty that Plymouth got for a handball by Callum Styles, which it's not a penalty, is it, Justin?
No, it's not a penalty. And I know people who have seen Callum Styles' arm and the ball hit his arm, and they're going to say it's a penalty. I don't think it's a penalty, and I think it's a decision that changes the course of the game. That's why I think it's such a bad decision, because I think, unfortunately, if Plymouth don't get that, I think West Brom see the game out. But I will acknowledge that Callum Styles' arm is in an awkward position, but it's parallel with his head. I've analysed this to the 10th degree. Styles' arm is parallel with his head. So in an unnatural position, no, it's not above his head. And I feel, for me, it's a natural position when you lunge to block, when you block a shot. In addition, I think this is very important, it makes contact twice with Styles before hitting his arm. His shoulder, and then his face, and then his arm. I think we've got too many grey areas with the handball rule. I think that's a very important thing to point out. And with this decision, for me to be convinced that it should be given, I think 2 points of contact on an individual, I think, is very harsh. I will state as well, the handball rule is still very, very flaky, because even the PGMOL released to the Premier League guidelines, I should say, a deflection that is taken into account if the ball comes off a player, off the same player or the teammate, just prior to the ball striking their arm, it has to be justifiable. So again, it's very subjective, and that's where the debate comes into it.
Yeah, well, I think you've pretty much summed everything up very well there, Justin. I was surprised at how many people on social media were saying that it is a penalty. I think
they just see it hits his arm. They just see it hits his arm, and fair enough. But you've got to look at it and go, oh God, it's hit Styles in the face and on the shoulder before it hit his arm.
But it's the unnatural position thing, isn't it? Because look, footballers have arms. When you close down a shot, it's impossible to keep them by your side. So to give it for that is ridiculous. And the one thing you haven't mentioned is just how close the ball was to Callum Styles when he got smashed at him from a metre away. It's really harsh. So it's not a penalty, and it's cost West Brom in this one. We will give Plymouth praise, though, Justin, because I thought they defended really well in this game, and the comeback was great. They could have done with showing a bit more threat in the first 75 minutes of this game, but to come from a goal down to get your first 3 points in 3 months, it's great stuff.
It's important as well, and I think you've got to. Again, this is where I think it was a terrific performance. Is that they might not have offered a hell of a lot going forwards, but they tightened up and kept a very talented team under a manager who wants to attack. They kept them relatively quiet. I know West Brom, you can argue they were in control of the game, but for me, Plymouth were also in control of the game from a defensive point of view because they didn't allow West Brom to break them down. They didn't allow them to get in behind. It was a very compact, resolute, defensively switched on performance. The important thing is when you're in a relegation fight and you get a manager who knows what they're doing, and this is where the criticism Wayne Rooney came in. Music has identified the weaknesses and he's trying to correct them. And I think that will slowly start to seep up the pitch. Sort the defence out first, stop conceding stupid goals, and let's see where that takes us. And that's where I think that's the mentality that they've got to approach games with. And we saw that with this game. And hopefully we start seeing it more consistently. And then we can start seeing them express themselves going forward as well.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, Justin. They have been much better in these last two games, and got to remember, against two good sides, because Miran Muslic seems to have finally got through to the players, and they're showing some fight. I think Ryan Hardy's had two really good games, someone Wayne Rooney never really seemed convinced by, even though he scored double figures last season. Timotas Buhac, someone I keep bringing up, but he had another great game against West Brom, deserved an assist for the winning goal after a brilliant pass, but technically won't get it. But yeah, I've been really impressed with him since he joined Plymouth. And Maxim Tolovirov, who is their new Ukrainian centre-half, had an immense game here. He's been getting rave reviews from Plymouth fans after that West Brom performance. So I think they've actually recruited really well this window, Justin. It does lead me to wonder why they haven't recruited like this in the previous two transfer windows. Because if they recruited like this back in the summer, then they might be outside the bottom three right now, which is the frustrating thing with Plymouth, because their recruitment for many years has actually been really, really good.
Well, I think that the first thing you got to point out is the investment came in after last summer, didn't it? I think that's one thing that they've spoken about quite openly. Is they said that the investment will come in January, which is terrible timing, obviously, because as you quite rightly point out, if you get that, if you get those funds in the summer, perhaps this season could be very different. That being said, would I want to trust a manager in Wayne Rooney with the funds? Not necessarily, but as long as the club's got a club joint, club specific approach, and that's absolutely fine. But I do agree the recruitment's been good, and it's only been a handful of games so far, but the early signs are there that these players are having a good impact.
Yeah, the good thing with Plymouth is that, them winning from a neutral perspective it means that we've got a wide open relegation battle still, because it was starting to look like they could be a case of Plymouth plus two others going down. And it might still end up being that way, but fingers crossed, we could end up with all three relegation spots available until the very end of the season. Just, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that.
It is wide open. I think when you've got the likes of Oxford, Stoke, Swansea getting dragged into it, quite a few teams down there have changed the manager, which again is a very important thing, to note, because that gives teams a new lease of life and can have a really positive impact. You've got the likes of, as I say, Swansea, Derby, who haven't done that yet, which has unfortunately dragged them right into it. So I don't know the definition of a good standard of a relegation battle, but we've got a lot of teams down there who are, I think, on a fairly level playing field, which is for us neutrals, very good.
Yeah, very good. It's really hard to call right now who's actually going down. And I was making the point last Monday about how the winner of this league this season might very well be the least strong we've had in a while. I think it's the complete opposite in the relegation battle.
Yeah,
all three teams who go down could be three of the strongest we've had in a while, which is a much better position to be in than recent years, where we've always had at least one team who's stunk out the league. Mm-hmm. So it's good that we're in this position now where it might hopefully not be the case. Anything on West Brom, Justin? It's a disappointing one after they thrashed Portsmouth 5-1 last week, but it is still early days for Old Mobes, isn't it? Yeah,
it is early days. And this is what I was alluding to in the preview show, in what I was saying that we yet to really work things out, away from home. We need a few more games for a bigger sample size. I think the last two performances haven't been obviously anywhere near as positive as the home performance against Portsmouth. But again, we're 3 games into a new regime, a new philosophy, a new style of play. And these moments are, or these types of games, these performances, you can't allow them to get in. I don't think Tony Mowbray will. But like I said, I think if that penalty's not given, West Brom see the game out. It's a scrappy 1-0 win. I think that's what I see coming out of this. So fine margins, disappointing performance overall, but you can't hang around on it.
Justin, our game of the week was, of course, Plymouth v West Brom, and it's now time for us to look at our bet builder for this game from Friday's preview show. A £10 stake was due to return £150 on our bet builder. We had both teams to score, which of course came in. We also had under 3.5 cards. There was just the one, so that came in as well. Done pretty well with Ryan's card pick of the week this season. But unfortunately, we also had Grady Dean Garner to score, which didn't come in. We also had West Brom to win, so no luck for us there. And then we had a bit of a nightmare with our multiple, actually. A £10 stake on our multiple was due to return £224. We had West Brom, Hull, Sheffield Wednesday and Norwich all to win. The only winner there was Justin's outsider of Norwich to win. The one we least expected here, Justin. Typical.
It's always the outsider. No, I mean, look, you can say we least expected, but I was pretty confident in my picks. But I think, yeah. I mean, the biggest letdown was the West Brom Plymouth game, wasn't it? That was the biggest letdown. It was cagier than expected, and that's a sad thing. That's a sad thing we've got.
That's just how it goes sometimes, but we'll be back again with our next round of picks in this coming Friday's preview show with SBK. Justin, let's take a quick break. After that, we'll talk about 4 wins on the trot for Frank Lampard's Coventry and 7 losses in a row for Paul Warne's Derby. Welcome back to the Second Tier podcast, and it's now time for us to reveal the winner of our latest edition of Jameson's Weekend Hero, because every single week we're asking you to nominate a fellow Championship fan that you believe deserves recognition. It could be someone who drove you to a recent away day. It could be a friend or relative who got you into supporting your club in the first place. Whatever it is, we want to find out. So to nominate your Jameson Weekend Hero from this weekend, send us a voice note now on WhatsApp explaining your nomination. The number is in the show notes. And of course, if we pick you, you'll win a bottle of Jameson to share with your winner. But a bit of a change of pace this week, because I'm doing this week's nomination. What do you think about that, Justin? You got a problem with that?
I do, yeah. You're not nice enough to nominate anyone.
Well, maybe you'll be proven wrong on this occasion, dickhead. It's because I wanted to nominate someone close to me. I'm going with my partner's dad, Stephen. Now, Stephen is a long-suffering Southampton fan. Certainly been suffering a lot more recently with this season's antics, but believe it or not, he has been. He's had a rare weekend of joy this weekend, of course, and that's despite, of course, this season's struggles. But he keeps track of Saints' results all the time, keeps up with everything going on with the club, and he follows them like a hawk. Even though he doesn't live in Southampton anymore. He actually lives in Wales now, but still follows their results from afar. Now, I don't think he'll mind me saying he's not been in the best of health this past year. Despite that, though, Justin, he listens to every single episode of the Second Tier podcast without fail. He loves it, mate. He tells me every time we speak that he enjoyed the latest episode, tells me what his favourite bits were. And even though Southampton aren't in the Championship this season, probably will be next season, but even though they haven't been in the Championship this season, he has been enjoying it thoroughly. He might even be our number one fan, Justin. Having said that, I am biased, of course. But this week, for 1 week only, I wanted to do my own Jameson Weekend Hero and nominate my partner's dad, Stephen. Justin, otherwise known as our number one fan.
Yeah, I mean, not only are you nice enough to nominate someone, I think that's a big call. But obviously, Stephen intensively listening to every episode, I think is a big pull. Is a big pull. And him being a number one fan is an incredible thing. I didn't think it was possible to get ahead of some of our Discorders, but Stephen's proved me wrong. Love it.
Yeah, he's an absolute legend, Justin, and that's why he is this weekend's Jameson Weekend Hero. So let's raise a glass of Jameson Ginger and Lime to Stephen, and Justin and I are going to have an honorary swig to commemorate this great moment. Delicious. And remember, you can nominate your Jameson Weekend Hero right now, just like I did, by sending us a voice note on WhatsApp. The number is in the show notes. So just 60 seconds explaining your nomination and you'll be in with a chance of winning a bottle of Jameson. You must be 18 or over to enter. UK only, and T's and C's apply. We've only got a matter of weeks until the end of the season now, people, by the way. So it's time for you to step up before the business end of the season. So send them in, get involved. We want to highlight those heroes in your fan base. Right, let's get back onto some of the action from this past weekend, Justin. And we'll go to Coventry, who have now won 4 on the bounce after a 2-0 victory at Swansea. 3-word review from Matt. It's on again. Ryan says, Swansea curse broken. Sky Blue count on our Patreon says, Leeds, watch out. Those reviews, of course, being for Coventry. This one is for Swansea. Paul says, where to start? Yeah, this was Coventry's first win at Swansea in 75 years. So that goes to show, Justin, Frank Lampard's Coventry are on fire.
Maybe the Lampard effect is real.
I will point out they haven't played each other too much in that time frame, but still, he's pulling off miracles, is Frank Lampard.
It's a big old accolade nonetheless. No, this was a good performance, a really good performance. And you know, it extends on what I was saying last weekend about them really turning the pace and becoming a side that we've not seen with the Lampard teams of old. You know, they're not over reliant on individuals. They are a lot more sustainable in their chance creation, or at least that's what they've shown over the past 4 games. And again, defensively, they've been resolute. Yes, they're still susceptible to a chance or two, but by and large, they've been the better team at, you know, the very least in the last 4 games that they've played this really good run that they're on at the moment. And I think that's testament to not only the good squad that we know that they've got, we predicted them to finish in the automatic places, but also, you know, Frank Lampard picking up a team that looked bereft of ideas, because that's where, unfortunately, that's how Mark Robins lost his job. Needed a fresh face, Lampard to come in, and he's delivering results, which is exactly what Doug King wanted.
Yeah, it is. It must be said, Coventry, they really did lay it onto Swansea here. A side who aren't in the greatest of licks right now, and we'll talk more about them shortly, but look, Coventry had plenty of chances in this one, and actually had easier chances than one of the ones that they scored, and that being Brandon Thomas Asante's lob from about 35 yards out. What a goal that was, Justin.
It's a lovely hit, and the pitch is absolutely awful, by the way. Probably more of a thing on Swansea, but the fact that Thomas Asante was able to pull that off on a bobbly pitch, or it looked like a bobbly pitch, was quite incredible. But I think only a player who's in good form, who's confident, can pull that off, because he's got 3 goals in his last 4 games after yesterday. Yeah, I think that's the biggest compliment you can really give Frank Lampard. I know we're talking about the Thomas Asante goal and how good it was, but Frank Lampard's really turned around the form of Brandon Thomas Asante, who was linked with move away earlier on in the window. You know, Stoke were, sniffing around him, etc. So you can only really, again, praise Lampard for that, but also Thomas Asante for the confidence he's now got. Because when he is on form, he can pull off the spectacular. He did it a couple of times at West Brom last season, didn't he? Where
I was going to say, Brandon Thomas Asante is going to show his grandkids a compilation of his greatest goals, and they're going to think he was on a similar level to Ronaldo, because some of the goals he's scored at this level are astonishing when you consider the fact he's actually just an unconvincing championship striker. But yeah, this was a brilliant goal. He has measured it perfectly over the goalkeeper. To have the audacity to even try it is outrageous. So fair play to him. Would you have scored that, Justin? Feels only fair to ask the question after the Josh Windass one.
Don't worry, I got tagged by a couple of people on Twitter asking me if I'd score this. You know the answer, come on.
Okay. Are you being serious?
To be fair, I think, again, technique-wise, he's not had to do a lot with it. I think that's an easier one to pull off than Josh Windass's.
No, hang on. Justin, you're on rocky ground here. You're on rocky ground. Think about what you're saying carefully. We don't want to repeat of last time. Do you think you could have scored that goal?
Do I think I could have scored that goal? Fuck it, let's be confident. Why not?
Are you being serious again? I can't tell.
Yeah, I think I could have scored that goal.
Okay.
I don't want Coventry fans either to call conspiracy here. So if you don't want to clip that up and get your clip, you clip it, Ryan. But I believe I could have scored that Thomas Asante goal.
Is it better than the Josh Windass goal, do you think?
It's not better, but I think the Thomas Asante one's probably easier to pull off, because the ball's come at him and I wouldn't say he's walloped it. I think that's unfair because it's it's probably got more measure about it, but because the ball's been passed to him and it's coming at him, not coming at him, but you get the point. Trajectory wise, it's a bit easier to get your foot through it and get the right. Because Windass is running forwards with it. It's trickier. Thomas Asante, the ball's coming to him, so he can put his foot through it and you can get a bit more loft that way.
Not sure I agree with Justin's sentiment there, because it's an astonishing goal. Whether it's better than Josh Windass's, I'm not sure, but I'd probably go with Josh Windass out of the two anyway. I also wanted to give a mention for Coventry's first goal in this one, because in the build-up, Milan van Ekvijk does a throw-in from near to the halfway line, ends up landing essentially in the penalty box. So not only has he launched it miles, but it's one of those things that I often think about. What if someone like Rory Delap were to just do a long throw from the halfway line every single time they had a throw-in down the pitch? Why doesn't it happen more often, Justin? I don't know. Just thinking out loud there for a second. One of those things that I've always wondered, why doesn't it happen more in football? Anyway, 4 wins on the bounce, Justin. Just to increase the volume of Coventry fans tweeting us to say we were wrong about Frank Lampard, and also to tell us a regular thing that's been happening recently, Justin, that this is the Frank Lampard effect. Justin, what is the Frank Lampard effect?
I don't fucking know. Listen. This is the bluntest I can put this. This Coventry team is built for pushing for promotion, right? It's had a lot of investment in it. It was underperforming. It needed a new manager to come in with new ideas. Frank Lampard's got that. Do I think this is an aura about Frank Lampard? No, I think it's a manager with different principles, different way of looking at things, and I think that's what the team needed. It's a really good run of form, but is this a godlike presence? Is this the Lampard effect? No. This is why I'm genuinely asking fans, what is the Lampard effect? And I don't think anyone's been able to tell me, because they don't know. They just see a turnaround in form. But as I say, this is a good team. This is a good team. It should have been performing better under Mark Robins. It wasn't. He lost his job. New managers come in and they're performing to expectation, and that's good. That's a good thing.
Okay, yeah, I agree with the sentiment there, Justin. I think maybe playing it down a bit, because they have played really well in this 4-game run. I'll happily give Frank Lampard full credit for that. Does that mean we were wrong about him? I don't think so. Just like I don't think we were right about him after he only won 3 of his first 9 games. I think
that's it. That's the thing that's been forgotten is the run of form towards this run of form, if that makes sense, wasn't amazing. They're just on in a really good patch. Now, if they can repeat this for another 4 games, then maybe the Lampard effect exists, and maybe we can put a finger on it a little bit more. But a 4-game spell is a 4-game spell. We need to see this over 5, 6, 7 weeks to be really
I think we'll only be wrong about Lampard if he gets them to the Premier League, because that's ultimately what he's been brought in to do, because Mark Robins couldn't do that. There's a long way to go in that regard, and if he does that, fair play. But I will also point out, I don't really care whether we're right or wrong about Frank Lampard. Look, though, they have been playing really well. Victor Torp and Jack Redoni in midfield have been really producing the goods recently. They could be even better when Matt Grimes comes in. And the strikers are now firing like they weren't before under Mark Robins. So good for them. We have got to keep in mind this is a very talented team, Justin, who shouldn't have been as low in the table as they were in the first place, as you were alluding to.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Maybe they could start to get back in line with the pre-season expectations of a playoff place, because that's where most people had them down. I know we went a bit further than that, but most people were expecting them to finish in the top 6, and now they maybe get back on track with that.
Yeah, well, we clearly rate the squad, but I think that the thing that's made me laugh the most is, a lot of outlets are suggesting that Frank Lampard's turned them into relegation candidates, into promotion candidates, which is not the case at all. They were 2 points above the relegation zone, granted, but that's after about 15 games. There's a lot of football to be played, and this is a very good squad. They weren't going to finish anywhere near the relegation zone, and they're not going to finish anywhere near the relegation zone. They're probably going to finish very much much closer to the top 6 or in the top 6. So this Lampard effect, Lampardian effect, if you want to give it an actual term, I just don't think exists. I think it's a manager who's got a fresh pair of eyes on a very good squad, and that's helping things. But like you said, the measure of success is him winning promotion. That's what we've got to judge him on.
They have got Leeds at home on Wednesday night, so a huge test for them in that one. Oh, dearie me, Justin, Swansea City. They are in a right old mess, aren't they? It's 5 losses in a row for them now. They've lost their captain and best player in Matt Grimes, their best defender in Harry Darling. There were loud boos after this game. It is all going very wrong for them, isn't it?
Yeah. How quickly it's gone tits up in the last literally just 6 weeks, because before Boxing Day, before the West Brom links, you could have really argued that Swansea were much more likely to finish closer to the top 6 than they were the bottom 3. And now I'm thinking, oh God, no, there are some bad trends here. They're conceding a lot of chances. They're not creating much. They look weak, so weak defensively and even poor in possession and blunt in possession. So that leads my mind to sort of going, well, could they be in trouble with the bottom three? We've talked up how good the relegation fight could be and how well you have to do to avoid it. And Swansea getting dragged into it. That's a scary, scary thing. And like you said, they've only got, well, we're recording this on Sunday, transfer deadline day. They've got 24 hours or 30 hours to get replacements in and improve the squad. This is a testing 30-hour period that could define the season. It's an incredible thing.
Yeah. You're not wrong. I like Luke Williams. I think he ticks a lot of boxes of what Swansea need, but things are clearly not going very well right now. It's really hard for us to comment on what's happened here, Justin, because it seems to me like something's happened behind the scenes. Whether that's down to Luke Williams not properly shutting down the West Brom links, whether it's something else, I don't know. But I feel like something has happened. But the fact of the matter is, Swansea were playoff hopefuls at the end of 2024. Just over a month later, and it's 1 point from 6, and they're now looking over their shoulder. So it's an astonishing turn of events, but right now they are in serious danger. They look like they are sleepwalking towards relegation. And Luke Williams, rightly or wrongly, may end up being the fall guy for that, because that's just how football management goes sometimes, Justin.
Yeah, and look, I think this is the thing. I know we've spoken about Swansea and we view Swansea as a project, and Luke Williams does deserve the time to take Swansea and that project forward. But at the end of the day, someone needs to come out. We need to see leadership from the club. And I did defend the owners. They're very new. They've taken over from a club that was ambitionless and rudderless and sailless. They were going nowhere under the previous owners, and they've had to come in and really change things very quickly. But unfortunately, the first window, it's been a massive failure. It's been a massive, massive failure. And like you said, Luke Williams is becoming the fall guy because the team's now not performing, and he puts a spotlight on everything, and the pressure just grows and grows and grows. So, as I say, the next couple of weeks really, or the next few hours, is season defining for Swansea, but also the next couple of weeks from a playing perspective is also season defining, because we've got to see Luke Williams adapt now. If they don't replace Matt Grimes, if they don't improve the squad, we've got to see him adapt again. And that's where the quality of coach really comes out in an individual. And if he can't, he's at risk of losing his job.
They are reportedly signing Lewis O'Brien on loan, which will be a very good signing if that does come through. But will be interesting to see what else they do before the deadline tomorrow night. Let's go to Derby County, who have now lost 7 in a row after being beaten 1-0 at home by Sheffield United. It's the longest losing run of any team in the Championship this season. So it's not getting any better for Paul Warne's boys, Justin.
No, and again, this was another performance where they offered next to nothing. Sheffield United, can't praise them too much for their win because they didn't have to come out of first gear to get it. It was a very simple performance for them, and I think that's the poorest indictment you can give of Warne ball, to coin it something. It was a disappointing game, and again, it was another game where I sit there and I wonder what the fucking hell's going on at the top of the club. Because for a manager to lose 8 games in a row, including the FA Cup, to League One Leyton Orient, that defeat was, to lose 8 games in a row, and to still retain your job after a poor December, despite a couple of wins, it's a crazy, crazy thing. And again, David Close deserves a lot of praise for saving the club, but unfortunately, you risk washing away that positive sentiment if you don't make a critical decision now to save the club from relegation. That needs to be done. You might be invested in the squad, but it's no good when the man leading the squad is a PE teacher.
No comment on the last bit. But as mentioned earlier, I was at this game eventually wearing jeans, and Sheffield United weren't great at all. I thought they were actually very, very poor, but Derby never looked like causing them any problems. I thought Derby defended well. Matt Clark in particular was brilliant, and I'm not just saying that because I was big in that signing so much last week. He was man of the match for me. But whenever Derby had the ball, they just had no idea what to do with it. They were just constantly hoofing it down the channels, usually to no one. Ben Osborne, Eber Adams, Craig Forsyth played 32 long passes in this game. Only 7 of those passes found a teammate. it's just so one-dimensional, isn't it? As I always say with Derby, if you can defend crosses and set pieces, this team under Paul Warne offers very little threat. And that's why Derby have now failed to score in 5 of their last 7 games. And it's also why you had Derby fans chanting, "Paul Warne, your football is shit," during this game. So that goes to show what it's not just 2 sour Derby fans on a podcast saying about it. It's what the Derby fan base is saying about Paul Warne ball as well.
Yeah, I am speaking very much as a fan here, but as a Championship podcast,
as a sour Derby fan,
as a sour Derby fan, yeah. But as a podcaster, we look at Rob Edwards, we look at potentially Mark Robbins, retaining their jobs for longer than they probably should have. Even Wayne Rooney, they've retained their jobs for longer than they probably should have, and unfortunately, it's really turned the tide of those clubs. Plymouth, if they get rid of Rooney much earlier, they could be out of the bottom 3. We're seeing them slowly turn the ship around under Mooseledge. Similarly with Matt Bloomfield and Robert and Luton, in that he's got a lot of issues he needs to fix, a lot of issues that could have been remedied a lot sooner if Luton have made the tough decision. Derby have a tough decision in Paul Warne, in that he's got 2 years left on his contract. He's a very nice human being. But as I say, niceness doesn't mean you're good at your job. And unfortunately, Derby, for me, are retaining a manager who isn't taking them any further. Why would then you keep them? It doesn't make any sense to me from a footballing perspective. You're not developing your players. You're harming the club more than you're helping it. Simple.
In that Premier League season for Derby, Justin, they never lost more than 7 league games in a row. And it's worth mentioning Derby have now got Norwich away next, which I can't see them getting anything from. The astonishing thing is, from the reports I'm seeing, there's not much indication that Derby are considering a change. In fact, they seem to be backing him with new signings. And while I think you can say, yes, the squad isn't the greatest, and yes, Paul Warne's had a rough time with injuries recently, there is a severe lack of evidence that Paul Warne knows how to get this team winning games again anytime soon, especially when his tactics are so one-dimensional. And if Derby are indeed sticking with him for now, it could be the thing that sends them down. Because 7 losses on the bounce, you've got fans chanting that the football's shit. What reason is there for sticking with him, especially when we're talking about a manager here who's been relegated in 3 of his 3 previous seasons at this level? I just don't really see what the motivation is for keeping him around when things have gone as badly as they have done recently. I know we've spoken a lot about Derby here, Justin, so we probably should move on, but it's very frustrating as a fan seeing this play out when it seems entirely preventable in my eyes. One bit of good news for Derby is that Ryan Nyambe's been back in the team recently after an injury layoff, which means he continues to bear down on the Championship record for the most appearances without ever scoring a goal. He's 6 appearances away, Justin. This feels massive.
It does feel massive. And again, what more reason do you need to sack Paul Warne? He needs to release the shackles from this team, not only to score goals, but it gives Ryan Nyambe a chance of breaking that. Do we want to see him break the record for the most amount of games of not scoring? No, we want to see him do it with 1 game to go. We want to see him do it on that final game. We want the drama. We've built this up for a long time, and Paul Warne is going to take it from us. He's going to take it from us, Ryan.
The scenes when he eventually scores a goal is going to be insane on here, isn't it?
If Paul Warne stays as manager, he's not scoring a goal.
But yeah, stay tuned to that. We'll, of course, be covering that in excruciating detail. I won't call this a great response by Sheffield United, just enough that surprise 3-0 thumping at Hull last time out. In fact, as we were alluding to earlier, I think they were very, very poor, and I reckon a better team would have probably beaten them in this game.
Yeah, but if a better team comes up against him, do Sheffield United raise the bar as well? I think that's what I was getting at earlier on. I don't think they needed to do anything to win this game. They took their moment when it came, and they didn't really do anything. If you are going to be really critical of them, they didn't put Derby away. But as we know, and maybe this is some credit to Paul Warne, Derby aren't a team that you can put away easily. They're a very stubborn side. They will offer nothing going forwards, but they won't give you too many chances at the back. And I think
stubborn's maybe a strong word for a team who've lost 7 in a row, but I get your point. My point is, I don't think Sheffield United were any better here than they were against Hull last weekend, Justin. That's the point I'm making.
Okay, but again, You're probably right. I'm trying to see the other side of it from a Blades perspective. You take the 1-0 win. It's the first at Pride Park since 2010, I think it was. It was something ridiculous. You take the 1-0 win, you take the clean sheet, and you build the confidence again because poor performances can seep in for any team. And also, this is the big statement, or not statement, but the big point of view is, Wilder's got a new attacking lineup that he's got to try and blend together, and that's a difficult thing to do, which is why I'm not getting too carried away with the signings that they've made, because it's a lot of hassle trying to fit them into the squad. Thankfully, they combined for the winner in Tom Cannon and Ben Barrington-Diaz, but I think there's more to come. We know there's more to come. They've got gears to go, but I don't think they needed to offer much in this game at all. I think I wouldn't say it's a negative. They were poor, but you win playing poor, it's a good thing, right?
Yeah, I guess. I think they should be playing better than they did in the last two games anyway. Well, Sheffield United had been busy in January, but they might not be done just yet in the final 24 hours or so of the window, because they've been heavily linked with QPR defender Jimmy Dunn. However, reports say they'll have to pay £3 million if they want him before the window closes, even though he's out of contract in the summer. So watch this space on that one. Let's go to Mark Robins, who got his first win as Stoke boss with a 2-1 victory away at Hull. 3-word review for Hull. Von Slider says home form stinks. Darren says Victor fucking Johansson. Yeah, a bit of a surprise result. I was saying on Friday, Hull seemed to be going in the right direction. Stoke seemed to be going in the other direction. So a Stoke win, not one I was expecting, Justin.
No, I think that's fair. I mean, Hull's form this season has been poor. It's been really poor. So maybe we've got a bit carried away with the Ruben Sellers impact. The Hull's home record is the worst in the Championship, by the way. But I think looking at the reflection of the game, the Hull's performance wasn't terrible, but Stoke took their chances when it came. When they came, they were very good at seizing those opportunities. You look at the first goal in isolation, for example. It was a bit of luck from Stoke's perspective, and Ali Al Mahdi took his chance after a missed interception, and that's what you've got to do. And I think Mark Robins will take that, because they've not been great since he took over. It's not his fault, because they've not been great all season. He's trying to turn around a big old ship in a very tight canal. The difficult thing with Stoke, but they'll take the 3 points in a performance where they weren't quite at it, and they'll run with that.
Yeah. It would definitely be a stretch to say they deserve the win in this one, wouldn't it? But it was one of their better performances in recent weeks. We'll say that much. It was a great start for Ali Al Hamadi, getting on the score sheet on his debut. Nathan Lowe looked bright again in this one. Man of the match, though, for Stoke was probably Victor Johansson. I know we've definitely not said that at any point this season, their goalkeeper being the busiest man on the pitch, but look, a win's a win, and considering the direction Hull were going in compared to teams around them, including Hull, worth mentioning, that makes this a big win, doesn't it, Justin? So Mark Robins will definitely take it, but it's a good reminder for Hull that even though there are teams right now who do seem to be in a poorer position than them when it comes to staying up, they still have work to do. But we saw a debut for Louis Barry against Stoke, who came off the bench. Elliot Matarzo made his first start since joining from Monaco. And as we sit here right now, Hull have had the busiest January window out of every club in the Championship. So with that being said, Justin, I know we've still got just over 24 hours left of the window, but would you go as far to say that they've had the best so far?
I think they've obviously had the most productive. They've tried to really close the gaps that they had in the squad, losing Liam Miller and Balumi, but big losses, and they've gone out and replaced those, and they've added to their strike force as well, an underperforming the strike force in the players that they had there throughout the season. So they've added a lot of quality in key areas. So there's good depth there. So you can't really take that away from them. But we said this about Hull last season. A lot of statement signings, but not a lot of substance. They didn't get enough results consistently going. So we need to see that. And again, if you're losing at home after dominating chances and being the better team, it's not good enough. And that's where the proof in the pudding is going to be with how good a window they had.
Yeah, well, that's obviously the case. The majority of Championship clubs are looking for a striker in January, though, and Hull were probably the most desperate out of all the clubs in the division, and they've ended up signing two, plus the most sought-after player in the Championship over the past month in Louis Barry. So I think it's been a very, very good window. I won't pretend to know much about Elliot Matarzo from Monaco or Lincoln Henrique from Fenerbahce, but Hull were looking very weak in loads of different areas, and now they're much stronger So I would definitely say they've had the best window, unless someone plays a blinder on deadline day, which is always possible in the Championship because anything can happen on deadline day. But based off what we've seen from the past month and a bit, Hull are definitely the outstanding one for me in terms of their January business. And the final game we'll discuss, Justin, is Portsmouth 0, Burnley 0. 3 reviews for Pompey. Scott says, boring, boring Burnley. Tom says, hand of Doz, which is in reference to Andre Dazelle and his handball, which was definitely more of a handball than Callum Stowers' in the Plymouth West Brom game, put it that way. But Justin, Burnley have now had 10 goalless draws this season. It's the joint most in an entire Championship season since 2008, and Burnley have still got 16 games to go. And I've seen plenty of shouts from opposition fans calling Burnley boring, particularly after that dreadful game against Leeds last Monday. But what do you think? Do you think Burnley are boring?
I'd be contradicting myself if I didn't, right? Because we said this about Scott Parker at the very start of the season, probably when he was appointed, that his style of football, unfortunately, is a bit bland. Now, I wanted to turn the page a little bit and praise him because I think this conservative approach is a good approach, but 10 goalless draws is a ridiculous amount. It's a poor amount, especially if you're chasing promotion. It's what you expect from a mid-table team, isn't it? You know, how often have we seen, Gary Rowett, Millwall side, draw their way to mid-table or draw their way to playoff contention? You've got to turn those bland, poor performances into wins somehow. And unfortunately, I don't think this Burnley side has got enough about them. Are they creating enough from set pieces? You can argue that they're not. Are they creating enough from wide areas? Arguably not. Is the introduction of new players going to help things? No, because we know Scott Parker, unfortunately, in his style of football, doesn't always get the best out of individuals. So, yes, Burnley are boring. Scott Parker is a boring manager. He wears cardigans, for God's sake. Of course he's boring. But, they're easy to defend against. I think that's it. Teams have got their numbers now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to disagree because 10 goalless draws in a season, that is boring, isn't it? It's very, very hard to defend that, whichever way you look at it. But, I mean, to defend Scott Parker in a way, Scott Parker's paid to get results. And in that sense, he is doing a good job. That's why Burnley are third in the table. People will say football's about entertainment, and it is meant to be. But if you ask Burnley's owners why they're paying Scott Parker, they'll say it's because they want to go straight back up. And if he thinks making Burnley extremely cautious is the best way to go about it, then that's up to him. Would I want to watch it? No. As a neutral, do I want to see a team getting promoted while being incredibly dull? I mean, I'd rather not, but it's all about promotion at the end of the day, and I doubt Scott Parker will particularly care if he gets called boring as long as he gets Burnley to the Premier League. Is he making the most of the talent that he's got at his disposal? Probably not, but again, I don't think he particularly cares. It could be a bit more exciting soon, Justin, though, because Burnley are reportedly signing Marcus Edwards from Sporting. Fabrizio Romano says it's a loan with an obligation to buy. It's based on specific conditions. And he goes on to say Scott Parker, being a former teammate of his at Tottenham, was a key factor in the decision. Fabrizio even replied to our tweet about the news on a Saturday afternoon. So thank you, Fabrizio, for sending my phone into meltdown. But what a move this would be, Justin. He was being linked with Liverpool, Man United and Spurs last summer, and now he's going to Championship Burnley.
Yeah, I don't really know what that says about Edwards, but what you can say is he's got an abundance of individual quality. He's played European football very recently. The only caveat I would throw in there is Scott Parker. Is he going to get the best out of Marcus Edwards? I don't know. If you go back to when he got promoted with Bournemouth, they signed Todd Cantwell back when he was, a promising player with a point to prove. Did nothing. Siriki Dembele was in great form for Peterborough and a really sought after player. Did nothing. Kiefer Moore really did impact things, but again, was he utilised to his best strength? Probably not. Nat Phillips came in as well. They've had a window like this where Scott Parker's had a window like this where he's been incredible, but unfortunately, I just question whether or not he's the man to get the best out of someone like Marcus Edwards in this team. I don't really think he is, unfortunately.
It's a fair point to make, Justin. I mean, if you look at who have been Burnley's best players this season, they're all defenders, the goalkeepers, and maybe Josh Brownhill as well. Otherwise, you're not getting any attacking players in there either. So it's a very fair point to bring up. And when you've got someone as talented as Luca Colaiacho, I know Burnley fans will say, will point fingers at him for how he's not performed as well as many expected this season. But it may be a concern for what Marcus Edwards' season could look like even when he joins. But look, it is ridiculous because I suppose it helps sometimes for a player or a manager to be connected in football, and this is an occasion where Scott Parker's connections have really helped him out because he is a phenomenally talented player. I think many were expecting to move to the Premier League sooner rather than later. And I don't think anyone expected him to move to the Championship. It does sound like he's had problems this season. I think he's had a bit of a falling out with the Sporting manager, and there's been accusations of him maybe not being motivated enough, which is going to be interesting to see how that transcends into him moving to Burnley. But as far as sheer talent goes, he has shown at the top level, being the Champions League, that he can do it at that level. So for him to be playing in the Championship, hopefully Scott Parker doesn't put the leash on him and lets him really flourish, because that would be exciting to see as a neutral, won't it, Justin?
Yeah, I think the worst thing here is you could get Scott Parker. But also, he's going from playing European football to being told what to do by a man in a cardigan. It's very frustrating, I imagine, for him. I know I keep coming around to the cardigan, but that's a big thing. It's a big thing. And if you're wearing cardigans, as I say, it's unfortunately, you're boring. And Scott Parker is boring. His football is boring. And that's just where we are.
Didn't want to point this out, but Justin Peach was a big cardigan wearer at one point in his life.
Am I boring? Fuck yeah, I am.
He embraces the boringness. Worth mentioning, by the way, Jay Rodriguez has left Burnley to go to Wrexham and was congratulated by former West Brom defender Alan Niam in a very interesting way. You can go to our Twitter to have a look at that. I don't really know what was going on random there. Let's do the polls. Just in this part of the show where we give the listeners 3 questions on Twitter. If you want to get their thoughts on everything to do with the Championship. So the first question we asked was this: are Leeds winning the Championship title this season, yes or no?
Yeah, of course they are. Come on. Yeah,
it's hard to see anyone else beating them at this current moment in time. 78% of people said yes, 22% said no. This is an interesting one. Who's had the best January transfer window so far? Hull, Middlesbrough, Plymouth, Sheffield United.
Oh, I might go as far to say Plymouth,
Yeah, that's why I put Plymouth in, because I think it is a close one between those 4. I think Plymouth deserve a bit more recognition than how they've done in this actual poll, Justin. I would go Hull personally, as we were mentioning earlier, but 35% of our listeners went with Middlesbrough. 31% said Hull, 24% said Sheffield United, only 10% said Plymouth, which I think is a bit harsh on old Plymouth. They have lost Morgan Whittaker, in fairness, which is a bit...
Got 6 million for a player who didn't want to play for them.
Well, Ibrahim Sissoko as well. 2 very talented players to lose in the same window. So that is worth pointing out. And finally, which underwear do you wear? Baggy boxers, briefs, Y-fronts, or other?
What are briefs?
Briefs are like tight boxers.
Yeah, I just wear tight boxers.
Yeah. I do too. Because it makes me feel cozy. 39% of people said baggy boxers. 36% said briefs. Yeah, I'm not a fan of baggy boxers at all. 18% said others. 7% said Y-fronts.
What's the point in wearing baggy boxers? I need to come out back on this. What's the point in wearing baggy boxers? Everything's just flying around everywhere. It's uncomfortable.
Helicoptering while running down the street. Yeah, I don't understand that at all. But there we go, ladies and gents. Those have been the polls, and this has been the Second Tier Podcast. But if you're a Patreon subscriber, don't go anywhere, because we've got the extended edition of the weekend show coming up, which we like to call Zamora Time. We'll be talking about a Lancashire derby, Ibrahim Sissoko to Sheffield Wednesday, and potential controversy in the Craig Bryson pub quiz. If you're not a Patreon subscriber, sign up to get Zamora Time in every single weekend show. Head over to patreon.com/second tier. Link is in the description of this episode. Sunderland. Just before we go, a reminder, we're doing a live stream of our reaction to the big game in Monday night. It's Middlesbrough v Sunderland, a North East derby. We'll be doing a live stream on our YouTube channel straight off the back of that game. But if you can't join us, make sure you go into your podcast feed straight afterwards and we'll have our reaction to that game as soon as possible. And also, we will be giving away 2 free pairs of tickets to some viewers on our live stream for Middlesbrough v Sunderland. So if you can tune in, make sure you do so on the Second Tier YouTube channel. So we look forward to seeing you then for that. But otherwise, this has been the Second Tier Podcast. I've been Ryan Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
And a big thank you for listening.